Spaceflight is an exceptionally dynamic field where something interesting is always happening. Today, we have 3 topics focusing on the latest developments in this field. We'll start with the launch of the Russian probe, Luna 25, which will attempt to land on the Moon. The second topic will cover the suborbital flight of the spaceplane SpaceShipTwo, carrying 6 people on board, 3 of whom were tourists. We'll conclude today's video with another launch of the Falcon 9 rocket, which once again pushed the boundaries of reusability. On August 10th at 23:10 Universal Time, the most significant Russian space launch of this year took place from the Vostochny Cosmodrome in the Russian Far East. The Soyuz 2.1B rocket performed flawlessly, and the upper stage Fregat set its course towards the Moon. This allowed the Luna 25 probe to separate from this stage. The initial plans for this mission emerged back in the 90s, but the project underwent numerous changes and delays. Originally, this mission was to be named Luna Glob, but it was eventually renamed. The reason was to emphasize that it is a continuation of the legendary Soviet Luna program. The Luna 24 mission launched in August 1976. The current Luna 25, therefore, arrived 47 years later. You may recall our episode about the Indian lunar mission, Chandrayaan-3. While Luna 25 is flying directly to the Moon, the Indian probe had to repeatedly adjust its orbit using its own propulsion. While Chandrayaan-3 weighed almost 4 tons at launch, Luna 25 is lighter. It weighed approximately 1 3/4 of a ton at launch. However, this comparison isn't very informative, as a significant portion of the mass of the Indian probe was propellant intended for significant orbit changes. Luna 25 has already performed corrective maneuvers on its trajectory towards the Moon and will soon enter orbit around the Moon. The actual landing is planned for August 21st. The Indian probe is expected to land on August 23rd. Luna 25 is intended to land in the Boguslawski crater near the Moon's south pole. However, backup options exist if needed. Its scientific equipment weighs 31 kilograms and includes, for example, spectrometers and instruments for measuring thermal properties of regolith. For this purpose, the probe is equipped with a sampling arm capable of collecting samples from depths of up to 40 centimeters. In addition, Luna 25 will study the very thin atmosphere around the Moon. Its scientific mission is expected to last up to 1 year, so it will have to deal with several lunar nights, which last almost 14 days. The commercial spaceplane SpaceShipTwo from Virgin Galactic embarked on the Galactic 2 mission on August 10th. The carrier aircraft VMS Eve took off from Spaceport America in New Mexico, and the SpaceShipTwo spaceplane, specifically the VSS Unity model, was suspended between its 2 fuselages. After reaching a height of 13.5 kilometers and confirming all systems were operational, this spacecraft could be released, and it then ignited its rocket engine and entered a steep ascent. The Galactic 2 mission was Virgin Galactic's very first flight with space tourists. The previous commercial mission, Galactic 1, which took place earlier this year in June, had Italian researchers on board who conducted experiments during the flight. The current crew consisted of 6 people: the commander, the pilot, and the instructor from Virgin Galactic, along with 3 tourists. Briton John Goodwin previously competed in wildwater slalom canoeing and became only the second person diagnosed with Parkinson's disease to reach space. Another tourists were two women from the Antigua and Barbuda archipelago, Keisha Shehoff and Anastasia Mayers, who made history as the first mother-daughter duo to go into space. VSS Unity reached a height of 88.5 kilometers and then began descending. According to American standards, this marked a flight into space, as the US considers this boundary at a height of 80 kilometers. However, from an international perspective, it wasn't a space flight. The internationally recognized boundary of space is at an altitude of 100 kilometers. The first SpaceShipTwo expedition with tourists ended with a successful landing of the spaceplane on the runway at Spaceport America. Virgin Galactic aims to increase the frequency of its launches to as many as 3 per month. The most recent SpaceX launch occurred on August 11th at 5:17 Universal Time. The Falcon 9 rocket took off from the Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral in Florida.
Go Falcon, go Starlink.
The payload this time consisted of 22 Starlink second-generation mini-satellites, each weighing around 800 kilograms. The rocket's upper stage delivered them into a trajectory at an altitude of approximately 290 kilometers, with an inclination of 43 degrees relative to the equator. The unassuming heroes of this mission were the two halves of the aerodynamic fairing. Few people are aware that this hardware lands in the ocean, where it is retrieved and reused. This time, there was an additional milestone. One half of the fairing flew for the 10th time, and the other even achieved its 11th flight. The ship called Doug was responsible for recovering them from the water, and brought a total of 4 fairing halves to port, including those from the current mission. Compared to the record set by one half of the fairing, the first stage of the Falcon 9 was merely an example of ordinary reuse. It flew for the 9th time. Yes, the reusability of the Falcon's first stages has become somewhat routine for many, but admit it, it's still a breathtaking sight. This time, the first stage landed on the ocean platform. Just read the instructions. Thank you for watching today's episode of Spaceflight News. If you've learned something new, don't hesitate to give the video a thumbs up. And if you don't want to miss any new episodes, you can simply subscribe. The next episode of our show will be released on Wednesday, August 16th.